So take it easy, everyone. Have a nice day. Bye-bye. Yeah. Like Moran on the piano.
I met Freddie in the mid-80s. I was working at the time for Dave Clark on a show called Time, which is a musical in the West End. We were making the album, and Dave Clark thought 2 or 3 of the tracks on the album were ideal for Freddie. And as a logical continuation of the work I'd done on the album, Dave suggested the idea that Freddie and I might work together. Freddie, I seem to remember at the time, I think was making the Mr. Bad Guy album in Munich. He certainly was resident in Munich. And we met at Abbey Road Studios for the first time. And really that was the start of a long-term relationship. We worked together from then on until the first time I remember hearing Freddie Mercury. I was actually driving through, I was driving up Primrose Hill, and Kenny Everett on Capital Radio then said, "Listen to this record, it's the best thing I've ever heard," and it was Killer Queen. And it was an extraordinary record, it's still an extraordinary record. And I thought, well, this is, you know, the band, of course, had been around before then, but maybe not so much in the public persona. I just thought this was the most fantastic record, and he was the most amazing performer. And as the band became more and more visible in the media, not just me, but everybody began to be aware of what an extraordinary performer this chap was. On every level, I mean, he was an incredible singer, absolutely amazing singer. I still struggle to find anybody that competes with Fred as a singer. And certainly, as a rock and roll performer, I think anybody that's got a commanding stage presence has pinched something from Fred at one time or another. That goes from, you know, artists like Prince and you name it. They've all, in fact, they've admitted so much as well. So yeah, I was a big fan of the group and Freddie. Yes, I don't think people at large realise how insecure people in Freddie's situation often are. As we all do, Freddie had huge insecurities and even worried about his own ability. Now, that may surprise many people when you look at how confident and how wonderful a performer he was. But he had those insecurities, as we all do. He worried about his appearance, he worried about his voice, he worried about his writing. It didn't stop him from exploring all those things. It didn't stop him from writing or performing, or it didn't stop him from appearing in public, so stating the obvious, really. But I don't think people realise to what extent he did worry about these things. The short answer to did Freddie care about the press was yes, you care, because they can be quite horribly vindictive and wounding and grossly inaccurate. And Freddie, more than most, suffered from people who really had the, I don't know how to put this really, well, they just tell lies. People that really had no business even talking about him. If someone he didn't respect criticised his work, he would go, well, you know, what do they know? With regard to working with Montserrat, for example, he worried that people would misinterpret things, that maybe imagine that he was trying to be something he wasn't, maybe worried that his voice wasn't good enough to be on a par with her. Yeah, I mean, he'd have massive insecurities, as we all do, if we're really honest. And I think, as often happens with people that are as highly profiled as Freddie, it's sometimes a surprise to people that that they are normal human beings, and perhaps with many more insecurities and worries than most people. He worried about his friends and his family, and he was desperately keen to take care of everybody that he thought relied upon him. On the way to meeting Freddie for the first time, the day before, I think it was on a Monday, we did the session. Excuse me, on the Sunday, prior to that, I'd had a car crash, a head-on collision with a truck. And I was in some discomfort. I'd broken 4 ribs and also slightly sprained both wrists, which was not really great for a piano player. And on the first session, of course, I said to Dave Clark, whatever you do, don't mention anything to Freddie. I don't want him to think I'm complaining about anything. And we started to record this track, in my defence. And it was just piano, bass and drums and Freddie. And we were getting, more and more intense about this. And Freddie was going, yeah, this is great. I love all this. Harder, faster, play some more twiddly bits, get faster, bit flasher there and whatever. And I had got what I thought was the definitive performance as far as I was concerned anyway. And we went to listen to it back and Freddie said, oh, that's wonderful. It's ever so nearly there. I said, my God, you mean ever so nearly there? He said, yeah, but I think you could do a little bit more at the end so it's a bit more exciting or whatever. And at that point, Dave Clark said, well, Fred, he said, he did have a car crash yesterday and he's in some degree of discomfort. And Fred said, oh, we'll find it. I said to Phoebe, give him some vodka and give him some pills, make him feel better. We'll go and do it again. It'll be fine. So we had to go out and do the whole thing again. Freddie was a great one for testing you. In other words, you had to work damn hard when Fred was about. And there was none of this, oh, that'll do business, which is not my way anyway, but the two of us were such sort of perfectionists in the studio. It's a wonder we ever got anything done, to be perfectly honest. But it was a great experience, and I remember many times in the studio that for example, Fred would go out and sing after I'd finished my bit, and I'd be sitting there. He would say, well, what do you think of that? And I said, well, it's okay apart from that. And he would I remember on one occasion he turned around and said, for God's sake, he said, you're worse than I am. He could go crazy. He could actually ask people to do impossible things or things that he could conceive of but maybe could not quite execute. And one of his favourite things, he would just say, oh, come on, dear, you can do far better than that. Go faster, louder, crazier, whatever. All these ideas. I want you to do it even more than that. Or when you played something really well, and he said, no, I think you can do it even more. There was this constant quest for, even more extravagant things, or even more interpretive things, or more dynamics, or whatever. We went to all the important functions, Christmas, birthdays, and we became very close on a social level. And it was a wonderful experience. That house at Garden Lodge was an absolute delight to be in, full of wonderful things and done with impeccable taste. And it was also a home. It was a place that wasn't precious either. Fabulous array of friends. We had hysterically funny times. Wonderful sing-songs around the piano with, you name it, they were there. But sometimes just Fred, Peter Straker and myself. Hours. He was an immensely kind, thoughtful, generous, sweet individual. Very amusing. He was the most incredibly funny man. And very loyal to his friends. He was incredibly nervous about meeting her in the first instance, but Fred had such wonderful presence that of course, as soon as he met her and got over the original, my God, it's this diva I've loved for many years, he then became very animated and really wanted to know all the details about her life and these great performances that he had on video and all these, great recorded performances he had of her. And within 10 or 15 minutes of them being introduced, they were best friends. It was an extraordinary lunch, and he was in awe of her. It's not in awe, is perhaps the wrong word. He had an immense respect for her, and she was one of his favourite performers. So the actual meeting in Barcelona took the edge off when we worked together. But it's still the first time you work with someone like that. And I suppose conversely, the same goes for her working with him. It's a totally alien thing for her to do. She'd never done it before. And I think one has to remember that this was before the three tenors had, sort of come forth. It was really before people had gotten the idea of mixing, rock stars and opera singers perhaps becoming crossover successes in the commercial market. I remember when we first did Barcelona, and before he and Montserrat had really performed together, this was in Ibiza at the Coup Club, and Montserrat had arrived, and he said to me, "Well, maybe I shouldn't, she's a well-respected diva, and she's perhaps not used to my cavorting around the way I do." He said, "Maybe I should sort of tone it down a little bit." I said, "Well, it's your show, Fred, you do what you like." And of course, what he'd forgotten was that here was this diva that came on, has done all these powerful operatic roles. Of course, she came on like the battleship Potemkin, and he ran over to me and he said, "She's outdoing me, watch this." Boom, and off he went back again. And that was the start of this chemistry. But he was quite taken aback. I just remember him waltzing over to the piano. He said, "Wow, she's outdoing me. This is not on at all." And this amazing chemistry then started to take hold, and off they went. I remember, obviously, the Freddie the performer. Freddie the private man, I remember on wonderful one-to-ones when he confided some very private things, which are not to be repeated. And he was just a very generous, lovely man. That's all. The Barcelona album and subsequent things were not the end of the story. Yes, but I guess we would have carried on with his solo album, which was interrupted, fortunately, I suppose, by this collaboration with Montserrat. Yeah, we would have carried on. We would have carried on, on a different tack. Yes, yeah. There were many things we talked about, which perhaps would have come to fruition. Yeah.
Intent wasn't really, at least in the later days, to work all day and all night. It was more do a little bit of work, do that concentrated and quick, and then go out and have a good time for a long time.
I remember one thing which sort of in some way sums up Fred's approach to life. We were around there working in the afternoon, and also there was an event in the evening which just encompassed the usual suspects: myself, my wife Linda, Peter Straker, a few other friends, just the same people that had been round maybe 2 weeks prior to that. And I was just leaving to go home and change, and Fred was fussing around, getting everything right, flowers, the right tableware, everything right. And I said, "Fred, and he made some radical change in the flower arrangement. So I can't quite remember exactly what it was, but I said, "Fred, calm down, relax a bit. It's only us, And he said, "My dear," he said, that's absolutely the whole point." In other words, his friends were the most important people in the world, and that's why he made the effort. And it's a great object lesson to anybody. It doesn't, you know, you make more effort for those people you care about than you do for anybody else. And that was perhaps Freddie in a nutshell, yeah. I've been very fortunate in my life to have been involved with some of the, you know, the bigger rock bands, played stadium rock, jazz, popular music as a studio musician. I think, for my money, Freddie Mercury is perhaps the finest interpreter of a song I've ever worked with. So I've never seen anybody that gave so much to a performance. It was the most extraordinary person to watch. Extraordinary emotion when you're on stage with him. I mean, this is an artist who gave absolutely everything in every performance. Never half measures. So I put Fred right up there with the very best of all time.